Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Eric Bradlow, Professor of Marketing, Statistics, Data Science, Economics, and Education, and more importantly for today, Vice Dean of AI and Analytics here at the Wharton School. As we kick off a brand new school year, and literally not a second can go by in my job where whether it's researchers, practitioners, or students aren't asking me about the state of the art in artificial intelligence and data science, I thought it'd be good for me to bring some content to all of you. Obviously, recent topics like agentic AI, the return on AI investments are permeating all the conversations in business today. One of the great things about being at Wharton is that we have people affiliated with us. In this case, today we're going to be talking to Richa Ranjan. She's both a Penn parent and an advisory board member of the Wharton AI and Analytics Initiative. Richa brings more than 20 years of experience of leadership in this area. Currently, she's the Senior Vice President of Product at the Expedia Group. As a matter of fact, just a side conversation, 20 years ago when I started Wharton AI and Analytics, Expedia was the first company we ever worked for, as a matter of fact. She leads core platforms and AI initiatives at Expedia across their global brands. When I first met Richa, she was the Vice President and General Manager at Microsoft, where she held various leadership roles, including, it's hard for all of us to believe the way this area is changing, but we'll get into that, Microsoft Office Copilot. So it's not your 30 years ago coding experience. The life has changed. And of course, prior to that, she worked in another area that I've spent a lot of time on in my personal life, which she was at Google in both product management and workspace ads and payments, where she managed more than 1 billion products that managed over 1 billion users and over $20 billion in revenue. So Richa, welcome to the Wharton AI and Analytics interview series.
Thanks, Eric. It's wonderful to be here with you.
So let's just start with the beginning. What does the term, there's lots of terms that are out there. What does the term agentic AI mean to you, and why do you think it's become so popular?
It's a great question, Eric. I think it's a very overloaded term, to be very honest with you. So I'm glad we're defining it up front. When you think about what agentic AI means, or what agents, as some people call them, mean, it's really about a piece of software that can plan, execute, and learn towards accomplishing a goal. So as a user, what you do is you state, I want to accomplish X. And then this piece of software will tell you, okay, here's how I'm going to accomplish it. It's going to take the steps towards accomplishing that goal. And then as it finds either new information or executes some of the steps, it's able to adjust its course based on that new information coming in. And so this can be within one tool. So for example, it can be writing a document for you automatically, or it can be across multiple tools, like pulling information from, let's say, another product like Jira and pulling that information into Word and creating the document for you with now Jira content. So that's where I think a lot of the power of these pieces of software come into play. And then again, that ability to make decisions and almost create forks in what it's going to do based on information is where this becomes super powerful. So let's say you've asked it to write the document for you, and a piece of information makes it decide, well, instead of writing the document this way, I'm going to write it another way. The agent can make that decision and execute on that plan. So that's why it's really powerful. It's helping you condense the amount of work you need to do and giving you almost like a first draft or a first version of something that you can then build upon.
Well, there's at least three things you've said, probably more, that I'll already follow up on, and this is why it's great to have conversations. This is not an AI agent. This is actually me talking to you, but it could be an AI agent interviewing you as well. Let's talk about the agentic part. So when people use the word agentic in front of AI, like, to the layperson, does it mean automated? Like I wash my hands of it, this agentic agent handles everything for me? Let's just start there.
That's a great question. So I think there's two parts to that. One is when we say automated, a lot of times we think about automated workflows, and what those do in many cases, it's a deterministic path. So I know it's going to do A, then B, and then C. When you talk about agentic, the path is not deterministic. And so it could be A, C, B, or it could be A, B, C, it could be A, Q, R. So you really have to think about when you're designing these agentic systems, what are those moments in those systems where you need to have a human in the loop to help you decide what the next step should be? Sometimes you'll need that. Sometimes, if you feel very confident in the output of the AI, you will not need that. But I think, Eric, that's the difference between agentic AI and just let's call it automation.
I see. So let me ask you, what roles do you think humans play? I mean, we all, both you and I know, you can view, I mean, one of the underpinnings of AI is this idea of learning. Typically, whether you want to call it reinforcement learning, which is the general broad area of mathematics, computer science, and statistics. Let me ask, I'm going to ask this in a strange way. Are humans basically the people that will provide the supervised learning data for which AI, like, is that going to become our role? Like, the AI engine will provide some output. Eric Bradlow or Richa Ranjan will give a thumbs up or thumbs down. That will give some sort of data that the learning engine can now use to train itself better on. Or do you see humans' role as kind of more of a first draft, which is what you said in your earlier comments, or both?
I think it's both, Eric, and I love that framing that you've put there with the supervised learning or the reinforcement learning. I think it's going to be a combination of things, and it's really going to be situation dependent. So, in a situation where I am sending, let's say, information to a client, I probably will want to have a human in the loop moment where every client probably has a bespoke interaction with me, and so there will not be enough data for that bespoke interaction to just fully train a model. That human in the loop might always need to be there. There are other situations where what information the human provides can be eventually incorporated back into a model in a reinforced way. So I think it's really going to depend on the type of situation that you are working with and where and why you have that human in the loop. I think that is going to become, as companies and as businesses move more towards agentic AI and setting up these systems, I think what is that human in the loop moment? And how do you decide what type of moment that is are going to be two critical questions that people are going to have to grapple with.
I could not agree more. I'm going to want to dive into that in just a second. Let me ask you a question. Who's going to, without, I mean, you could mention a specific company if you wanted, but what's going to win in the AI space? Like, for example, do you think, I almost thinking in a Lord of the Rings way, will there be one ring that rules them all? Or will there be a different, let's call it AI platform for, I don't know, let's call it resume writing, and there'll be another one for coding, and there'll be another one? Or do you think it's likely to be a winner take all situation? Because you both, your time at Microsoft and in Copilot, but more broadly, whether it was at Google, which way do you think it's going to turn out? And it's hard to know, but what would you guess?
I think, Eric, if I answer your question this way, I think there are going to obviously be a set number of platforms and models that will be used. But I think what you're going to see is that more and more companies and individuals are going to really focus in on individual verticals in order to create specific workflows that will take end-to-end scenarios and accomplish them. And I think you can't do that in a very horizontal way. You're going to have to get into verticalized data. You're going to have to get into very specific workflows that one person or one persona is executing in order to be, frankly, in order to be successful. If you look at it, there was a report that I think something like 95% of AI efforts are failing from a financial point of view. And part of that is because if you make it too horizontal and you aren't focused enough on the workflow, on the steps, on what you're trying to make agentic, I think that's where things are starting to fall down. So there's a movement towards more verticalization, specialized data, specialized workflows that people are heading towards. So I think that kind of answers your question. There's going to be at the base level a set of companies that I think will be winner take all in a sense. They'll probably split it between two or three of them. And then there will be verticalized flows on top of that specialized players will head into.
Yeah, I'm glad you're saying that, because this is what I've been telling my students and in talks over the last 2 years is that, first of all, I think people that have better data, that's going to help win. And people that have specialized workflows is what I've said. So I'm glad to hear that that's being confirmed in some way. So, Richa, you had mentioned that a lot of companies, I think you may have quoted the number 95%, aren't finding AI necessarily profitable. What do you think is the cause of that? Is it because, I don't know, creating the data warehouse and pipeline is really costly? Or it's, as we know, running large language models is not free. Those cost money. Or it could be because it's not the cost side, it's that the return side is so low. What do you think is actually generating, if you'd like, not everyone is winning, if you'd like, from a profit perspective in the world of AI today?
It's something that I think a lot of people are trying to grapple with. So I don't think there's a clear-cut answer yet, but I'll offer some thoughts in this space. And I think it's 95% of AI-driven projects or projects involving AI are failing. So
Ah,
I think there's a couple of things, Eric. As you mentioned, the data may not be in a centralized location that's easily accessible. Usually data, as you know, you're the expert on this one, like data is dirty, right? So can you get it in the format? Can you clean it, et cetera, to make sure that it is in a situation where
I
you
think the part that shocked me, Richard, just so you know, when for 20 years I've been in some sense the vice dean. It wasn't our name of the whole time of Wharton AI and analytics. I just assumed that all companies, I'll use the New York vernacular here since I'm a New Yorker, had their data together. And I'll tell you, it's not true. The data's messy, different systems, getting them to integrate, that's a big, big challenge.
I 100% agree. So I think companies that are very excited about AI need to take that as a first step, right? I think the second thing is really understanding where do you want to focus with this agentic flow, right? What are there's a number of different frameworks you can use. One of them that I like personally is jobs to be done. So what are the personas you're going to tackle, and then what are the jobs to be done that that persona is going to undertake that you think you can automate? And by that, I mean you have the data, you have the ability to actually automate. Sometimes some systems you're not going to be able to actually use, agentic flows between. So you have to make sure that that's all mapped through. So let's say from the tech side and the data side, you're like, check, check. I'm good to go here. I've mapped out my personas. I've mapped out the jobs to be done for them. I've thought about that human in the loop moment in the redesigned workflows. Because again, if you have a mistake at the beginning, it could compound towards the end where suddenly what you thought was heading towards one direction heads to another, and then the whole thing's not helpful to you, right? So having that kind of mapping and making sure that you're heading in the right direction with the human in the loop. The financial part does play a role in it. If you are revamping some sort of workflow that costs you maybe $2 per time it's run, and it's run once a month, and it costs you $100 to run your agentic workflow, probably not worth it. So you have to look at that up front. But I think the one thing that a lot of people are finding is it's the change management as well, right? So I've heard a number of times AI dies at the front lines. And I think that's very true, where if you don't have the right change management processes in place, the right training processes in place, then you are not going to see adoption of this beautiful system that you have now built and are hoping to capture some savings. So that needs to be thought of as a part of building the technology and rolling it out. And then finally, I think a lot of people, and people are getting better at this, but a lot of companies, started with agentic and with AI, and it was more of a bottoms up, grassroots, everyone try everything, right? So when you think about that 95%, some of that's facetious because it's all bottoms up and things are dying on the vine, as they should, right?
Right.
Really having a clear understanding of what business levers you are trying to drive as a result of these workflows helps immensely when you're trying to think about the ROI. So in general, Eric, I would say, it's everything from the data to the technology that you're using to mapping the workflows and the personas that you want to tackle to the change management for those jobs, personas, and workflows. And then finally thinking about the financial aspect and being very clear on the impact you believe this should have. And if you can line up all those, which is a lot to line up, but if you can line all those up, I think that's where you see more success in these types of workflows and reimaginations.
So let me talk about the human element of it, which both, because you've had leadership roles, have had to experience this as well, because that's the part where I think a lot of us, even myself, many of us struggle. How do it's the classic, I'll call it agency theoretic or incentive alignment problem. How do you get people to embrace aspects of AI when it could literally replace parts of the job that they do? So how do you get, like, as you said, how do you get people engaged so it doesn't die at the front lines? I don't, I'm no expert. Matter of fact, it's probably the area change management, which I hate to say it. I'm just a computer scientist and statistician. I work on the algorithmic part. It's not that I don't think about those parts, but how have you tried to bring that type of change management broadly to the firms that you've worked on?
There's a lot of different parts to that, Eric. And I think the one part that I've seen a couple of companies start to go down this path, and I think it's a good one, is involving HR at the beginning. So in some companies, HR is actually the ones responsible for the
Hmm.
AI change management, which I think makes a ton of sense because, frankly, they are the experts in this domain. So I think that's one tactical thing that companies can look at today and right away. The second thing is, I think the training, whenever you're given a training at corporations, oftentimes it's a video. Let's be totally honest. Many of us have a video running and we're doing something off on the side, and then you answer a couple of questions and you're done. I think the training has to be very hands-on. So in general, what you see when you are trying to, even when people are learning how to prompt, the most effective situations for learning how to prompt were when you would get a whole bunch of people in a room, open up their laptops, and have them actually try prompting and really make it hands on. And I know, Eric, this is something that you really champion at Wharton, which is hands on, real world experience, right? So
Absolutely.
bringing that into the corporate world where you are training people hands on. I think the next part is showing them the benefit. And this is where we go back to, as you think about what workflows you're making agentic, I would suggest starting with workflows that remove something that is annoying to a user or they don't like doing in their job. Great example. I have yet to meet someone who loves taking meeting notes. There's always a game of who has to take meeting notes, and everyone's like, not it.
Yeah, right.
So I think with a lot of the automated note taking capability now in many of the products that are out there, it's removed that functionality. And so people are willing to test AI and try AI. I think it's removing that, difficulty or difficult, annoying part of my job. If you can take it away, I'm more willing to try it. So it's showing the benefit to that user, the user value to the person who has to use it. Then at the end of the day, I think in some cases there has to be a top-down mandate with leadership heavily showing how they are using it, celebrating people who are using it. And I think at the end of the day, if you can couple a number of those things, it's really important. And then having a very clear vision on, hey, if a job is made redundant or is made obsolete because of this, what are you doing with those jobs and those people in those jobs? Is it retraining, reskilling, moving them to a different area? Being very clear with the workforce that you're expecting to adopt this, I think helps give them a roadmap and helps them show clarity on what's going to happen. And that I think will increase adoption as well.
Well, let's talk about the education piece for a second. I know, well, you obviously have a child here at the University of Pennsylvania. I have a child here at the University of Pennsylvania. But a lot of our listeners to this content may have children or may just be thinking about how do they themselves upskill themselves. So let's start first with the college age student. I get this question every time I give a talk. What should they be learning today? Learning in quotes. When you're looking, and by the way, we're doing a study on this right now.
Yeah.
When you're looking to hire people,
Yep.
what are the skills, at least on paper, before you speak to the individual? Or another way to frame it is, as your AI engine is scraping through information on people's resumes, what do you think it's looking for that would create some form of differentiation? Since in some sense, the AI engine, you could view it as raising the floor, like everyone can now do this. So that's not a differentiator. I'd love your thoughts.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things, and I'm going to go back to what I think is the ethos and what I really love about the Wharton Analytics and AI program. I think hands-on skills are the most important thing you can do, and this is where, I think the WAF program, Eric, that you started, is something that I fundamentally believe in because I think the people involved in that program get very hands-on, very very concrete skills, both in terms of hard skills, building models, working with, all different stacks of technology, because these companies all have different tech stacks, to the softer skills. How do I interact with a team? How do I negotiate with others? Someone's not pulling their weight. What do I do? We have to present to the CEO next week. How do we pull together the relevant information for someone at that level? And how do we describe the work that we've pulled together? And how do we bring up the risks and pitfalls, right? So I think hands-on programs that give you both the hard skills as well as the soft skills are going to become critical when companies in general look at resumes. A lot of the resumes, especially for new college hires, start to look the same. Everyone's got a wonderful GPA. Everyone went to a wonderful college. Everyone has, great courses that are super interesting and I wish I could take. So how do you differentiate yourself? Well, it really gets down to what have you built? What have you done? And have you worked in a team? I think teamwork is going to become so critical and so vital. You mentioned, is coding, like, is CS just not a great major anymore? I actually do think there is a role for CS. I think you're going to have to see, and you're going to see people move from writing the code to reviewing the code. And as you know, Eric, the only way to really be able to review something is to deeply, deeply understand it. So if you are doing CS, what I would urge you to do is go do the really hard courses, right? The systems architecture, concurrent systems, those types of courses where you can truly understand what is going on. And then you're going to be able to review the code that is generated by one of these AI programs and understand where the flaws are, where the bugs are, etc. That's going to become, in my mind, one of the more important skills. And I think what you're going to see is people who have that skill are highly, highly valued.
Just a few comments, Rich, on what you said. So first, you gave away my big secret, which is people for 20 years think I've been teaching them machine learning, data science, and AI. I've been teaching them leadership, how to work in teams. It just happens I'm doing it through the vehicle of AI and data science because that's an area that I'm passionate about. But you're right. Also, what you just described, like when we admit people to our PhD program here at Wharton in the marketing department or in all of our departments, what demonstrated capability do you have in research? Because, there's too much uncertainty in today's world. There's so few jobs. There's so many talented people. There's so many few doctoral spots. There's so many talented people. Have you actually done research? Or in the AI and analytics space, this is what our belief is at Wharton AI and Analytics, you will be better prepared for your job and the workforce if you've worked in a cross-functional team and you've actually worked on a real applied problem. So I could not agree with you more. What would you suggest to somebody? Let's imagine, I was somebody you were advising, and I'm a lifelong student, of course, but I'm not in my 20s anymore. I'm in my 50s now, and I'm thinking, what do I need to know? And let's even focus on someone at your level, someone that's in the C-suite. What do you think everybody in the C-suite, like it's probably not the advice you would give my son or your son, like study systems architecture and data pipelines and different tech stacks. It's probably going to be something different. Any suggestions there on that population?
Absolutely. I think play. So open up these products and play with them, test them, try them. What we're going to see in my mind is that you're going to move from a manager who is strictly a manager to a player coach type manager. And in these roles, we're going to have to really get our hands dirty. We're going to have to be tactical. We're going to have to be hands-on and really understand what's going on. There's going to be things that you probably had someone else do for you in the past that you can now do yourself and take a first pass at. And so really getting into, I call it the IC manager, where you are a manager, but you are also an IC. And you are able to switch between the two. So I think that first thing is really play, get into the details, try these things. It is magic when you really try them. I think the second thing that people should be thinking about is, when you are at a certain level in an organization, you are getting a lot of information in. And it often comes to you in email, it comes in chat, there's meetings, there's recorded meetings, etc. And what AI can do and unlock for you is very different. What you can do is you can actually get AI to look across all that information and give you concise summaries. So as an example, I can say, hey, give me a allocation of where I'm spending my time on these 5 topics over the last, let's say, month. And if all of my data from my email, my chats, my recorded meetings, my calendar, if it's all flowing into one system, AI can actually look across and say, here's where you're spending your time. I can then compare that to, let's say, my goals or my OKRs or whatever I use for my prioritization. Say, where am I not spending the right amount of time, or where am I spending too much time? And I can efficiently look at that and say, okay, I need to either delegate this area, stop this area, or refocus myself on these higher priorities if it identifies something of low priority. So that would have been tougher to do, and I probably would have had my admin pull my calendar, give me a dump of this. I would have tried to match some meetings. But with AI, you can do all of that very, very simply because AI can look across multiple systems, gather data on multiple topics, and bring it to you in a very synthesized manner. And so, in addition to the play, I would say start to think about these types of scenarios that are unlocked because you suddenly have all of that information at your fingertips.
I would also imagine, I'd love your thoughts on this. One of the things I do in my MBA class, which is a course in data driven marketing strategy, which is everything from new product development to pricing to target segmentation, all the things that we as businesses think about all the time. I ask AI to pressure test it. So I ingest either data sets or analyses. Imagine, Richard Ranjan, someone presents you something, and now whether it's a spreadsheet or a macro or some Python code or some output, and now all of a sudden you can ingest that into a large language model, ask it for the critical assumptions, ask it to pressure test it, run a simulation. All of that can be done. Like I don't have to go now to my head of data science and say, can you run this for me? No, I can run this myself. So I'd love your thoughts on it as almost like a sensitivity tool, like, how crucial is this decision and what are the big uncertainties? Because the old saying, not that statisticians have that many sayings, but if we had one, our saying is anyone can give you a point estimate. You hire us to give you uncertainty estimates.
I love that, Eric. I think you're 100% right. I think it is, taking a number of different roles and almost democratizing them for you, right? So you talked about the analytics role. You could have a similar conversation on a researcher or competitive analysis role where I can run a deep research agent through ChatGPT, Copilot, or any of these other programs, Anthropic, and I can get back a very consolidated report of what happened in the industry in the last, let's say, month, and what the implications for my company or for my role are. And so I do think you're right. There is this democratization of multiple roles, and it suddenly becomes accessible at my fingertips.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, maybe as a wrap up, we're here in 2025. Let's imagine, and this is not surprising because, you are going to be linked to the Wharton AI and Analytics Initiative forever. Let's say it's 2030. And I'm still in my prime. We could say 2050. What are we talking about with regards to AI and data science? Are we looking back and say, wow, the application areas have been so much broader than we think? Are we looking back and say, wow, these tools are so much more powerful than we think? Are we looking back and say, no, the future is still ahead of us? Like, are we still at round one of a 10-round battle? What do you think we're going to be talking about 5 years from now? And by the fact, 5 years may be too long, but let's just go with 5 years.
That's what I usually think. I'm like, I can think in 1 year out, and even that feels too long a lot of the time right now, just given at the speed at which things are changing. But I think, Eric, what we're going to see, and we're already seeing this, is the distinctions between the models are getting smaller and smaller. The capabilities with all of them are collapsing, and so it's just that every company is doing such an outstanding job on their model. And so as that becomes, the difference between them becomes narrower and narrower, I think what we're seeing more is there's really interesting applications that start to come out. And so I think in, let's call it 2 years, let's go in between you and I here, or 3 years. I think what we're going to see is a lot of applications in the healthcare space, especially, that you and I are going to be sitting here in a couple of years riffing on and just being amazed at how it has unfolded so quickly, so dynamically, and has had such a large impact on humanity. And so that I think is one area. I think the second area is I think there's going to be a lot on financial improvements, both in terms of helping people get to a better financial state, as well as improving on fraud and risk and all that sort of area as well. So I think what we're going to see is in certain verticals, we're going to see an advancement of the application of AI in helping boost those verticals, move them along faster, and creating these almost like jumps that were not possible previously in terms of capabilities. I also think that we are going to have a lot less talk about AI. It's just going to become a part of life and a part of everyday working. So it won't be this specialized thing. It will just be, I'm trying to share a message. And now AI might be doing 90% of the work there, but I will not think that. I will think my message is getting shared. So I think what we'll see just is the quantum jumps in certain verticals, and then we will see this kind of quiet adoption and almost integration of AI where it becomes just another capability. No one really talks about the web anymore, right? It's just there and you use it. And so that's where I think it is. But I do think there are a number of leaps in the capabilities of the models that will still occur and happen. And I'm really excited about those. But I do think that it's going to become just a pervasive part of our lives.
Well, Richa, on behalf of the Wharton School and on behalf of the Wharton AI and Analytics Initiative, I'd like to thank you for joining our, if you'd like, interview series today. And thank you for your partnership and leadership as we move AI and analytics forward.